Let me ask you something. When was the last time someone asked you how you were doing and you said busy? When was the last time you looked at your calendar and felt that specific kind of dread? Not because anything on it was bad, but because all of it was happening at the same time. We have built a culture that treats having it all as the baseline expectation. Be the best at your job. Be the best parent. Be the best friend, the best partner, the most present, the most available, the most put together person in every single room that you walk into. And not just be all of those things, but be all of those things simultaneously, and right now, and tonight, and tomorrow, and the day after. And if you can't, if something slips, if you're crushing it at work, but your house is a mess and you haven't called your best friend in 3 weeks, then we feel like we failed, not by anybody else's standard, but by your own. My guest today, Valeria Gutowski, has lived that. She piled it all on, her career, motherhood, friendships, obligations, and she pushed through every single wall until she realized something that changed everything for her. Maybe you can have it all, but just not all at once. And maybe that's not a compromise. Maybe that's actually how you become better at all of it. That's why today, when we return, my guest, Valeria Gutowski, will make the case for not having it all at once. Welcome back to The Case For. I'm your host, Matt Campobasso. Today's guest is someone who has spent her career at the highest levels of finance and accounting, and who has lived up close and personally the cost of trying to be exceptional at everything all at the same time. Valeria Gutowski is the Senior Vice President of Finance and Chief Accounting Officer at Norstella, one of the largest pharmaceutical intelligence companies in the world. Before that, she served as Executive Director and Chief Accounting Officer at Infusion, where she and I worked together for a few years that sometimes felt like a few decades. Valeria has held senior roles at EY, Navistar, and R.R. Donnelley & Sons. She holds a Master of Science from the Mendoza College of Business at Notre Dame. But the credential that matters most for today's conversation is not on her resume. It's the season of her life where she was trying to run a global finance function, show up fully as a mother, be present in her friendships, and keep all of it together. And what happened when she finally stopped trying to do all of it at once. Valeria, welcome to The Case For.
Thank you, Matt. It's nice to be here.
So, Valeria, before we jump into your case, and I'll guide you through the case because your background is in accounting and finance, I'm the lawyer here. Tell anybody listening a little bit about yourself, who you are, where you grew up, your family, your career, anything you think might help paint a complete picture. So as you make your case today, people can understand where you're coming from.
Yeah, sure. Well, first of all, I think you just kind of talked about my resume pretty well, so that I won't recover. I will just tell you what my specialty is in my professional life. I specialize in transformations. So I really spend a lot of time trying to build team, upscale team, and just generally redo processes. As you know, Infusion was one, and this one was even a bigger, I guess, a bigger transformation that I worked on. But more importantly than that, in my personal life, I'm also the mother of two teenagers now. They're 15 and 13, a girl and a boy. I'm an immigrant, which is a very important point in my life, and it's something that really defines me. I grew up in Italy, in a small coastal town. Now I've been here for about 20 years at this point, but some things are just part of us, and they're just so important for my everyday decision and how I look at the world. And then, just outside of that, a big part of me is just like being active and in the outdoors and just sort of have fun with my family. I particularly enjoy skiing and hiking.
It's been a while since you and I have caught up. For those of you listening, our company, Infusion, our last company, was acquired, and that transaction closed in May of 2025. So Valeria and I worked pretty closely together for a few years, and then, as happens when you change companies, we kind of lost touch. So it's great to have you back here, Valeria. I can't believe you have two teenagers. I have one, and I can barely do it. So kudos to you for making that work.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. So Valeria, as we've talked about, every guest that I bring on to the podcast here gets to make their own case. So obviously, I've alluded a bit to what we're talking about here today, but as it is your case, why don't you tell us about it in your words? What is the case you're making today, and why does it matter to you?
Yeah, so my case is simply that no one can have it all at one time. And this fact does not diminish that person at all. In fact, just the opposite. And so to me, it's like we've all been sold this idea that having it all means having it all at one time, that we must be everything at one time. And anything else is nothing but failure or being short of or some kind of deficiency. I can tell you, Matt, I particularly think this topic is relevant to women. I mean, more like maybe everybody for sure, but like I think to women and especially those in sort of a high power career, right? Because I think we went from a time where like it's just a huge shift maybe in the last 20 to 25 years. I don't even know, but like from a time where we were told, okay, no, like if you want to be a good mother, a good wife, or whatever, you could just cannot have these high power career. At least that was the case for me, and we can certainly talk about more about that later. And then over time, this has been this whole movement where it's just the opposite, right? Oh, sure, you can have it all. You should. You should have the career you want, the exposure you want. You should be as famous as you wish to be. You can be whoever you're going to be. And it almost went like a 360 from there to me, right? And not only you can, but all of a sudden you must, or otherwise you're just not good enough because maybe the idea is that we have all these opportunities, we can be whatever we want to be. So if you don't take the opportunity or all of the things, then you're just not good enough. You failed at one or the other. And so that's just my case. I think, though, that, that is not, that is, nor is it feasible. I think that we should apply some critical thinking to this idea and really look at the facts, right? Is it feasible to do everything at once? Or is it even real that you have to do everything that is offered to you? I mean, does it really make you any better? Or can you consciously choose not to do everything that particular moment and still be an excellent person overall? So I think sort of we have lost touch to what it really should mean or what opportunity well the fact that opportunity really translate in must do it all to be great, to be even good. And so I think that would be my case, that I really just don't think that you can have it all at once. And it's very important to really pick and choose different things at different moments. And that actually makes you better and in no way a failure of any kind.
You raised a lot of really compelling points and ideas there. I think number one, most people that are growing up in this day and age, and I won't age you, but I'm 47 years old, and there's this belief the world is bigger than ever, right? We are connected through news, through media, social media. My dad ran a company that was based in Illinois. That's it. They didn't have a London office, and you hear that or you see that in a movie and you think, wow, that the world, and a lot of companies are like that now. And if you are successful and you are promoted and you evolve, like we both have been in our careers, I know we've worked hard, the world gets bigger. And as the bigger the world gets, the more opportunity is presented. And I think there's this belief that there's opportunity or there's potential. And if you don't take advantage of it, you are somehow letting yourself down or your family down. And that can be really difficult. And that's not even to consider the points you made that are obviously unique to you or any females who are moms or considering being moms. That's an entirely different dynamic from a gender perspective. So it is hard because for example, feel like if I have an opportunity, I need to take it and I need to make the most of it. And I am absolutely one of those people that a lot of people around me, I hear this pretty regularly. How do you do it all? How do you do all of that? And sometimes I stop and I think about it. And then sometimes I just kind of push it down because I think, I'm not really sure how I do it. No matter how smart you are, no matter how dynamic, how successful, you only have so much attention. There's only so much bandwidth. And so if you're giving everything to your job day after day after day, other things in your life are most likely suffering. So I don't consider myself as trying to be perfect in everything I do. I try to be good or above average, and I know that I fail. But there's a degree of grace that comes with that. And I think that's the thread when you reached out to me on this topic and I started thinking about the idea of not needing to have it all at once. You can have it all, but be thoughtful about what's right for you right now. I started thinking about the concept of showing myself grace and accepting myself for who I am. So without getting too deep into that, I want to move in next to our exhibits. So Valeria, if you've listened to the show before, what I do right now is I will walk through a handful of exhibits. I will name them and I will prompt you, and then I'd love for you to take it away and explain to our listener the exhibit and why you believe it supports the case that you're here to make. So the first exhibit is what I call the myth of simultaneous excellence. I want to understand where the pressure comes from. So it's for you personally. Take me back in your career, whether it's 2 years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago. In your mind, what did actually having it all look like in practice? And so what was the story you were telling yourself about what you had to do and why you had to do it that way?
So when you asked to take you back, well, I really gotta take you back because for me, it all begins with, things that I sort of was seeing when I was a kid and how it evolved for me. So if you ask me, okay, what is it for you to have it all? And for me, it would be, I could tell you simply, okay, well, I would like a super successful career. I always wanted to like sort of climb the corporate ladder, so to speak. I never even knew what that meant until like maybe a
It just
couple of years ago.
sounded fun, right?
Right. It sounded fun. Like I just wanted my briefcase and get on a plane, which I didn't take money when I was a kid, right? All of that. But I also always really wanted kids. Like I always wanted to be a mom. So like, but just the idea was so hard to reconcile, right? And so where's the pressure coming from? Well, the pressure is simply trying to reconcile two worlds that sort of didn't make sense to me or anyone else, right? So I'll take you back, and again, it goes back to I'm an immigrant. I'm from Italy, so I mean, obviously Western world still, but like the way I grew up is in a very traditional family. My parents were really open and obviously really wanted me to do whatever it is that I wanted to do, but what I was seeing was very different. And so like my mom, she was a preschool teacher. She was at home most of my life. My family was super traditional. Like my grandpa was still getting served dinner before everybody else, and nobody started to eat. These are all true things that I lived in my life every day. Like my mom's family, she had a sister and a brother, and her sister were sort of discouraged from even looking into college or anything like that. Well, their brother was like being encouraged to go to medical schools. At the same time, while my parents were very open and were telling me, yeah, you should go to college, just do whatever you want, it's hard to reconcile. And so some of that pressure comes from there and just figuring out, okay, well, you're saying all this, but what I'm seeing is actually this thing. So how does that work? And then second, I always felt there were always some small things, whether comments or like I'd be saying to, my mom or even some of my really good friends right back home. I'd be say, oh, okay, I'm doing this. I'm traveling for work, going, who knows, to California. This is at the beginning of my career. I'm gonna spend a week there doing this and that. And the question was, oh, well, how are you going to do it when you're going to have kids, right?
Hmm.
So, and it was just like small things just waved in. Well, and the meanwhile, it seemed like time was like chumming through, and social media, the media were all saying the opposite. Oh, yes, yes, you can do this, you can do that, you can have it all at once. And so, I try to really reconcile this within my brain, within myself, and just assume that, okay, well, I need to be the great employee, the great, I need to be progressing in this way, but I also need to be there for, say, every milestone of my kids. I absolutely need to be back for dinner at a particular time, at a particular day. I must cook organic food or whatever there else constitute being a good mom. At the same time, there's all this pressure from everywhere to say, okay, well, social network is so important. You're just not going to live long enough if you're not maintaining your social networks and girlfriend, girl power, whatever. So like, okay, so that I also must be a super good friend and all of these things.
Hmm.
And that just creates a ton of pressure because the truth is I don't think that it is all possible every minute of your day. Brain space is limited, emotional capacity is limited, and you just need to pick and choose at different points.
Okay, yeah, I think as I'm listening to you talk, I'm realizing you clearly are very self-aware insofar as like, the messaging that you're hearing, whether it's from society or, for you, I feel like you were kind of being pulled between the traditional Italian upbringing that you had and your formative years seeing the differences in dynamic between men and women. And then you come to the US for college and the messaging is different. And so you're kind of straddling these two belief sets and it's figuring out what's right for you. I am not an Italian immigrant, but I am the son of an Italian immigrant. My dad came here in 1963 when he was 12. And one of the things that I know drove my dad, and he had a very successful career, was the opportunity. And so I hear you talking about your journey, and I'm thinking about my dad, and I'm realizing that if you're coming from a place or a time or an area where the opportunities are limited, when those opportunities start to present themselves, you almost convince yourself you have no choice but to go after every single one. And so that becomes, I think, structurally impossible. That's what you were alluding to, which is it's just hard to find the balance between all of those things because, to your point, you can't do the extra work that's required to become successful and then also make sure you're home in time to cook an all organic meal for your kids so society tells you that you're a good mom. And it's hard because in every direction, depending on what identity you're wearing, you're getting pulled in a different direction. And it really is, the pull is harder and harder. So let's talk about Exhibit B next, and that is the cost of piling on. What happens for you personally when you try to execute on all of these different things at once? Not the story that we tell ourselves, which is I'm managing, but the real version. Clearly, you came on here today and you brought this topic to me because recently or in the semi-recent past, you had some sort of aha moment. A light bulb went off and you had a realization that it sounds like is influencing how you're carving out this next part of your life. So was there a specific moment where you felt, I can't do this anymore? Or was it more you were just kind of going day to day and then something stopped you in your tracks and made you think about all of this differently?
It happened, I would say, multiple time in my life, and I quite didn't realize. I would say that this last time is really when I started consciously thinking about it and maybe making the choice that I had just to be more mindful going forward. And simply what happened is that, like I said, I'm working at I have this amazing role. It's very broad. It's like everything I've ever wanted. I'm learning tons. The transformation is huge. I'm building teams, building processes, system, whatnot. It's multinational. I've been traveling international a lot. Those are all great things. And it was just like that, right? Like this busyness, this movement, and this joy really that came from doing all of that. And then in the midst of this, I was still trying to do like doing the mom thing and the front thing and everything else. But what really tipped it over at some point, we had some sort of a family hiccup, I would say, family emergency. And all of a sudden, I found myself being a caregiver and for some time. And then also found myself, worrying about the future in a way that probably I had not done until that particular point, and wondering, what's going to happen next, and just kind of putting pressure on the life as I have known it.
Mm,
And then I started to realize that, it was just hard to really continue to pretend that it was okay to do just everything. On the one end, I didn't want to waste any time. I wanted to make sure that whatever I was showing to the various groups of people that I interact with every day was like, strong, very stoic, and just kind of like, yep, this is what we do. I can
mm,
do this, no problem. But the reality wasn't true, right? Because physically, like I was exhausted. Mentally, I was also exhausted, and I could start seeing how it was affecting some of the most basic relationship. Like my fuse was short. Like I had very little capacity to respond to my kids or even listen to their cues sometimes, because I was just exhausted myself and I was wrapped up in my head. So yes, maybe I was still going to every soccer game. I was still, there to pick up after swim practice every single time, right? But was I really listening? Was I
mm.
really like tuning in with the feelings and, the facial expression? I don't think so. Same thing at work. Like I did my job well. That never suffered, but like the micro interaction where they needed to be. Was I really bringing the best of me to work every day? And I think the answer is probably not. And so that's kind of what got me thinking. And I started to sort of pause and think back at my career and think about it. If is there a different way I should be looking at this busyness or this time with? Is there a different, better solution that that would actually make me feel better, but in response, then show up better for those who know me, who need me.
Yeah, and how they need you is different depending on the relationship, right? Your job needs you to show up and add value in exchange for a paycheck, right?
Exactly.
Your kids need you to show up and be present. And you're describing things, you're making me feel, not that I am glad that you struggled with those things, but I've struggled with those same things. And one of the things that I can say, and I hope it's okay, having known you now for a few years, you're striking me as a different version of who you are than I remember a year ago. And not that you weren't incredibly professional and kind and smart and hardworking, and I always enjoy to work with. But there is a level of humility, I think, that I'm hearing in your voice and some of the things that you're saying that tell me that you've spent some time over the last year thinking actively about what are your priorities, where do you want to put your energy, because you can't give everything this is the whole reason why we're here on this episode today. You can't give 100% of yourself to everything. And I read something a couple weeks ago, and this isn't to diminish your job or my job. Jobs are important, and again, I think we've both been successful because we've given a lot to our respective companies. But I read something that said in 20 years, the only people who will know or care or remember if you worked late are your kids. And it's a good reminder that a job is a job. And that's not, again, not to diminish the value of them and the importance of what people do, especially at your level. But I really am hearing something in your voice, this introspection. I would describe the you from a year ago as head down, 100 miles an hour, whatever it took to get the job done. And there's something to admire. And sometimes I'm sure you still have to be that person. But I'm really, as your friend, I'm really happy to hear you talking about these things this way, because I think with that humility comes the ability to show yourself grace, and we all deserve that. So, um, sorry for the detour there, but I couldn't not say those things.
No, but I agree. But that's just it, Matt. Like, it's not like I don't go 100 miles an hour. It's just
Mhm.
like, it's just about knowing when to push the gas, right?
Exactly. You're right. You can't do it all the time. You're going to burn out the engine.
Yeah.
There's a reason why it's called burnout. So let's move to Exhibit C. So Exhibit C is what I call the seasons framework. And so I think we just heard from you, and I wholeheartedly agree. Doing it all at once is not the answer. So what is the answer? Because I want to be careful. Seasons can sound like a nice word for giving up. Oh, this is my me season. I'm not going to care about anything or anyone. That's not the point here. And I don't think that's what you're saying. So break this down for me. When you think about balancing seasons and where you are in your life and what's your priority and where you put most of your energy or the majority of your energy, what do you mean by that? And how did you start thinking about your life in that context?
I think season can be many things, right? It doesn't have to be a specified period of time. I don't look at it from a chronological perspective. I look more so at it by from a criticality perspective, right?
Mhm.
Right now, when what is most critical for me to get done, what's going to give me the most joy, or simply what needs to be done that requires most of my attention, and something's going to go badly wrong if it doesn't happen that way, right? And so, what does that mean? It could be hours, it could be days, could be weeks, or could be a season of life. So, for example, for instance, you have a very specific, very important deadline at work, just to pick on that for, we
Mhm.
mostly talked about the family part, but like maybe sometimes there's some moments at work where you're just gonna need to, get through a board meeting or whatever, a plan, and you just need to get it done. So I think that that requires a lot of attention, a lot of effort. So maybe that season is that, well, maybe you're just not going to cook an organic meal from scratch every
Mhm.
night. And guess what? Your family is going to survive if you order, maybe potbelly a couple of times.
Sure.
Or, maybe on Saturday morning you're really exhausted and maybe you don't feel like going to the 50th soccer game, right? And
Mhm.
that's okay. And I think it's about deciding, okay, for this small period of time, this is important to me. I want to get it done. And so someone else will just have to wait. And not that you're not there still, because if I don't, for instance, back to the Potbelly example, right? Okay, well, I ordered in. It's not going to change anything on their health or their life or anything. I can have something left to talk about at dinner. Instead, if I try to, okay, I'm working until 6:30 now, I'm going down, I'm going to chop all my vegetables, I'm going to do all that. I got
Hmm.
nothing left when it's time to sit down and eat, right? And maybe that'll even be better because frankly, pot belly is probably better than my chicken. But other than that, so that's an example of when it goes the other way. So that may be like a few weeks or a couple of months. But like looking back, it could also be just a couple of hours, right? Just to say, okay, well, right now I have this meeting, it's very important, it's important to me. I'm not going to look at my phone to see what my friends are putting in the group chat. But once I'm done with this meeting and, then I'm going to be, maybe for 10 minutes, I'll be the best friend that finds the fun, TikTok videos. And I'll just concentrate on that and stop thinking about the meeting that I just had, right? I just don't go and cross those two things. And then sometimes broadly, right? Like, did I really do my life in a different way now or did I really look at it in a different way? I think the answer is really no, because if I look back, for example, there was a season, talk about season in my life where that was when I first had my kids, right? Unconsciously, I didn't even think about it, but unconsciously, I was working at EY, that's a very like difficult job, long hours. I had my kids and I kind of went part-time. And yes, of course, it was a privilege because I could at that time. But that was a choice, right? Could I have accelerated my career and maybe be where I ultimately want to be, this year or last year? Could I have been maybe the chief accounting officer somewhere sooner? Had I not done that? Maybe. But didn't matter because at that point, in that season, the critical thing was for me to raise these two young babies. I didn't have much family support because obviously I'm here, just my husband and I raising the kids, right? So it was more important. So everything else took a back burner. But when I look back, did anything really change? No, I'm still me. I still went through the career that I needed to go through. The opportunity may have been different, but it led to where it needed to go without all that
Hmm.
much thinking and effort. So it just depends. To your point, what's a season? Well, I think it could mean anything from a chronological perspective, but it just means what's most important to you at this particular time. Days, months, weeks, doesn't matter.
So I hear you saying it's about being deliberate and thoughtful about where you're putting your energy. And sometimes you got to fall down or make mistakes before you realize you can have potbelly delivered on a Thursday night when you've had a long week and the world's not going to end. But if you cook that dinner and you blow a deadline for work, that particular world might end. So it's about balance and it's
Yes.
about being thoughtful and overt about where you're putting your energy. So I like that definition of seasons a lot. Exhibit D is the power of releasing control. So here's where I think it gets hard because to me your seasons framework it makes sense intellectually. But I think to actually execute on it, you have to let go at some points. And so you have to accept help. You have to delegate. And for high achievers like you and I'll include myself here, that is terrifying. I am horrible at letting things go or taking my hand off the wheel. So, for you personally, what did it actually take for you to release control? And I heard you talk earlier about a family situation that came up and other things that kind of forced you. But are there other things around that helped you realize, you know what, it's okay to take my hands off the wheel once in a while?
Yes. I'd say again, it goes back to sort of mindfulness and maybe maturity to some degree. I don't know. Maybe I just got old to your point without dating myself. Is that I started to look around and think about this concept of delegation or I must do everything. But thinking about it more holistically, right? With the answer of the maybe the simple question, well, what if I didn't? Or what if this got delegated and something went wrong? And again, apply sort of the criticality idea of the season to this concept of delegation and sort of doomsday that a lot of time, to your point, high achievers get, right?
Mhm.
If I don't participate to that meeting, who knows what's going to happen? Or if
They'll
I
forget about
don't,
me, right? Or
yes,
someone's going to take my yeah. It's a
exactly.
horrible internal battle that happens. It's a degree of imposter syndrome. So apologies for interrupting you, but I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, exactly that. Or, again, back to the soccer game, if I don't go to that soccer game, will he think I wasn't there, right? But the truth is, how many did you go to? And you were consistently there. So is it really feasible? Is it really reasonable to think that just because you missed one thing
Mhm.
or you didn't do exactly right one time that you'll be forgotten, or that your signature isn't going to be, isn't going to be there? That's not. So maybe it's
Mhm.
just a little bit of maturity. Maybe it's like, just having to deal with, again, all these pressures all at once in that particular critical time that was particularly emotional. Maybe that kind of spinned it, and just sort of helped me with the perspective. I can't really tell you what it was. I think it just, like, over time, I just started realizing that, that actually the moment you decide to let go of some things, let go of the need to control or even know what's going to happen next, right? And let life sort of go on, is the moment where you can actually be most effective. And I'll tell you one more. I was doing a yoga class, and I had listened to this to the instructor said a quote that really struck with me, and I tried to apply, and that was this concept of trying easy, right? Okay, so I'm still trying, I'm still me, I'm still showing up, but I'm not struggling so much to control everything.
Mhm.
I can just try easy. Did I do my best today? Yes, great. That's all you were asked to do, not above and beyond. I find that once I did that, once I kind of let go of this control, I was actually being more effective. Like, people were responding better. I found that I actually had more thoughtful arguments or discussions to be,
Mhm.
to contribute in meetings. I could listen better to what my kids were going to tell me, right? And particularly that, like, especially with teenagers, sometimes, the minute I say something, you think you're listening, but you want to respond, you want to fix the thing for them.
Yep.
Well, this idea of letting go a little bit, well, you don't have to fix it. They're going to be fine, allows me to just be more silent, listen more intently, and guess what? They ultimately are easy to coach and navigate, and they come
Mhm.
over and discuss more often. So I don't know,
Yeah.
it was just kind of eye-opening.
I love that idea. I've not heard it put that way. On the topic of kids, very briefly, I am the same way. They start talking, I'm looking for the problem that I have to solve. And I think part of it is occupational. That's what lawyers do all day, every day. What I've started to try to do over the last few years with my kids is I will listen. And if there's a break in the conversation, what I will say to them is, do you just want me to listen? Do you want my advice, or do you want me to get involved? And that tells them, like, hey, I'm taking in the information you're sharing with me. Help me understand where you want this to go, rather than assuming you're the child, I'm the parent, you're bringing me something, I'll fix it for you. Because that's not what they always need. And to your point, if that's where your brain goes right away, is solving problems, you're going to disengage and you're probably going to miss something very important to them. And sometimes they just want to be heard, or,
Right.
told that, hey, that sucks that happened. I'm sorry. Like, I love you, and whatever the case may be. But I really like the try easy is really, I'm going to be thinking about that for a while, I suspect.
Yeah, I've been thinking about it since I heard it. It's been like, okay, yeah,
And
that
it's
that
such a
makes sense.
simple, it's such a
Such a simple
simple,
thing,
it's
right?
two words, but it is, hey, slow down. Like, you don't need to have your hands wrapped around the wheel and going 100 miles an hour. You can lean back a little bit and take it easy, and you can still do your job and expect, high performance from yourself, or to be a good parent. But the world's not going to end if you go, 30 miles an hour instead of 60. So the last exhibit we have, Valeria, this is, to me, this is the one I'm looking forward to the most. It's the proof. We've talked about so far the realization that you can't have it all at once, or to you, it doesn't need to be that way. We've talked about seasons. We've talked about the moments that have shaped this evolved perspective that you have. I want to know if it's working. Clearly, you had a moment where you're like, hey, I can't do it this way anymore. It's not getting me where I need to be. And so you stopped trying to have it all at once. So once you embraced this idea of seasons and focusing your energy in particular places at particular times, what's changed for you? Is it working? Tell us why this is a case that some of us should think about adopting for ourselves.
Is it working? Yes, I would say yes. Is it perfect? No, because sometimes I forget that I have this new framework and I just
Yeah.
keep on doing the same thing I've been doing before, right? But when I do stop and think, and I have tried to be much more conscious, it works, and it works really well. So first of all, I'm happier, right? And that I mean, that's priceless because ultimately, what are we here for? To be happy, to have a good life. And so, yay, I'm happy. So that's great. Two, I think I am actually showing up better for all the various groups that are there in my life. Starting with my family, I mean, again, some days I simply actually focus on work more some days. And yet I feel like when I'm done with that, I'm still better because I still like it's like giving myself permission to be whatever it is. And I explain to them, like, hey, right now it's just a a very hard time. I got to do this trip and then whatever the case might be. And they actually respect that. And it's almost as if it kind of everybody's working together. They even pitch in to help more, which is great. It's like admitting, look, this is what I can do. This is what, our family like this is how we decide to run this and this is a hard day, so I need you to step in and they do. And it's amazing because it almost gives them importance. So I will start with that. I think that's really great. I think I mentioned this a little bit ago, is just the ability to stop and listen better. And I'm not just saying listening to words, but it's also like listening and noticing like facial expressions, like cues, and just really what we would normally call like reading the room. That's a lot better if you or I notice on myself, if I leave some capacity and if I am focusing on one thing only, I can read the room a lot better. And therefore my responses are better. They're more thoughtful. It's just a more, I wouldn't say calming because it probably would be the wrong impression. It's just a more thoughtful day to day where, I actually know what I have done a particular day, what I have accomplished. I can reflect versus I don't even know what I did. The day's gone and now I'm exhausted. I just want to go to sleep. And then tomorrow I'm going to wake up and it's going to be a repeat. I would maybe call it intention. I don't know, more intentional life, I guess.
I've had those days where you're just barreling through and I don't, you start stacking those up. That's not a life at all. You're just surviving rather than living. So I'm glad you use that word cues a couple times when you're talking about your children. And I like that concept because I think for my 16-year-old specifically, and my 12-year-old to a degree, they might say something, but I know them well enough to know, you know what, they're just saying what they think they need to say in the situation. There's something below the surface, and then it allows me to maybe approach it differently. So, and it's at that age too, right? They're kind of figuring out how the world works and what their emotions are, and they're dealing with a lot. So it's on us as parents to really be paying attention because that investment of energy and time is only going to benefit both them and the relationship we have with them. So we're going to jump ahead to objections. I had a couple for you. I want to be mindful of time, so I'm just going to ask you one, and I would love to get your honest feedback on it. I think this objection has merit. So choosing your seasons and not trying to do everything all at once, it sounds like a privilege, right? Not everybody has the luxury of choosing their season. You've got single parents or people who have to work two jobs, people who don't have a support system. They don't get to pick one thing and let the rest wait. So they have to be the ones who are doing everything at all times because there's no one else there to take the reins from them. So how do you react to the objection that this advice sounds like it's for people who are fortunate enough to have a support system and they have the ability or flexibility to make choices?
I think that it's a really good question. I think just the fact that just realizing that people have choices is a privilege, and I know that not everybody at large gets to make choices. But I think being intentional with your day and with what's important to you at any particular moment can be a very small choice every minute if you have to. Yes, maybe somebody doesn't have the choice to stay home versus going to work. Maybe you have a death in the family and you just don't have the ability to rely on someone else, right? And so you really don't have the choice, but you can still choose what you do every minute, what you pay attention to more so. You can still look at your life and think about, okay, what is most critical right now? And respond in that particular moment. Maybe as little as, okay, maybe I will just listen to this conversation that me and my friend are having, and I will just choose not to look at my phone for the duration of the 10-minute conversation. That is not a choice that is it is a choice that is difficult to make because it's easy to pick up your phone and just check to see that, somebody maybe an email, a work email came through or whatever, right? But it is an available choice. It doesn't require any kind of money. It doesn't require significant support from anyone. It's just a conscious choice to say, in this minute, I'm going to be your friend, and this is who I'm going to be right now. And maybe the next minute I have 10 emails and I will not look at my phone and text to see. It doesn't care whatever happens. I will respond to my boss. I will get that memo finished because I need to be doing this, right? It's just about being intentional minute by minute.
Okay, I really like that. So, Valeria, as I mentioned earlier, every guest on the show gets the chance to make their closing argument. So, for a moment, I want you to speak to somebody who's listening who has tried to have it all at once, and they're listening to what you're saying today. What do you want them to walk away with?
First, I want them to know that they're not alone. I think that to some degree, whether people admit it or not, I would be willing to bet that nearly everybody feels that way at one point or another, right? So I think that just admitting and knowing that you're not alone, it's a big thing. Two, I would want them to know that they have a choice. They don't have to feel that way. Sure, some days are going to feel harder than others, and I'm not going to say that mine don't, feel overly busy or unintentional a lot of the times. That is not the point, but you do have a choice and you can choose to look at it in a different way. I would say, let go of the fear of not being enough, because the fact is, if you try to have it all and be everything to everybody, you might just not end up being enough. You're not going to be the best of yourself. So let go of the fear and embrace the fact that you can be a different you at every moment of your life, but moment defined, however you want it to be. And you'll actually be more effective for those who you love and who you care about, and for your profession as well. You'll be more effective if you just are intentional about when and how you do things.
That's great. As we talked about, and as anybody listening might imagine, you and I kind of exchange thoughts and ideas for the episode before we start recording. And so I'm looking at your notes, and there's a really great statement in here. And I'm going to say it because I think it needs to be said. And I feel like it's such a great note for our listeners. And so anybody listening, please know these are Valeria's thoughts, not mine. But in your notes, you wrote, "You're allowed to do one thing well right now and trust that the rest will get its turn." And I think that is such a powerful statement, because I do think that there's a feeling that we have to be everything to everyone in all circumstances at all times. And that is just not true. It's not possible, and it's just not true. And so pick your spot, do your best, and then step back and turn to the next thing. And that next thing might be just taking care of yourself, recharging. When you said, if you're listening, you're not alone, that is 100% true. Both people on this podcast right at this moment have felt these things, and there's a path through, but you just have to be thoughtful about it, and you have to be real with yourself. So, Valeria, before we go, I ask our guests to take these ideas, because a lot of this is conceptual, and we're going to step out of the podcast courtroom for a moment and into the real world. Give us 3 micro tools or things that listeners can do right now to start building this case in their own lives.
Yeah, I think the first thing is really, when you feel, overwhelmed and you have multiple demands, is think simply think what's most important right now. I think it's as simple as that. And then stop. Let it sit for a minute, right? Don't go to the next task. I think you'll kind of get an idea of what really is important in that moment, and then you'll sort of get the hang of it little by little. The next thing is, this idea of asking yourself, if I don't, then what? Or one of my favorite things is actually an advice that I received from someone else a really long time ago, but it just never clicked for me until very recently. And is that, okay, he says, Valeria, think about it. So play this out in your head. So this decision that you have to make, all of this that you got to do, so you do it well, fine. What if something goes wrong and somehow it doesn't work? What's the consequence of it 2 weeks from now? Then think about it a year from now, 5 years from now, 30 years from now. And if the answer is it's not going to matter a year from now or even 2 weeks from now, then then don't worry about it. And the greater the impact over time of that particular thing, I guess the greater the importance. And so again, I didn't follow it myself for a long time, but now when I am really stressed and I'm really trying to determine what is it that I really need to give all of my attention, I try to
Mm.
project it out in the future like this. I think it really helps. It really sort of has this way of calming you down and helping you prioritize.
Okay. Well, those are fantastic. I think seeing the big picture is such an important thing. And you said that it was great advice and you said he gave it to you. I wish it had been me that had given you that advice, but nonetheless, you got it. And that's the important thing. So Valeria, that is the case for. That is the episode. It means so much to me that you took the time to come on here and talk about these things. As your friend, I'm really happy for you. You seem to be at a place where, not that you weren't enlightened previously, but I feel like you're seeing things differently, and that's incredible. And it's to the benefit of your family and your children and the people that are lucky enough to work with you. And so I just want to say thank you for coming on and making this case. I think it's a case that a lot of people need to hear. I'm definitely one of them. So before we let you go, where can our listeners find you if they want to follow your work or reach out to you personally?
Oh, sure. I mean, I can be found on LinkedIn, Valeria Gutowski, various other social media, but I don't use them much. So LinkedIn is probably the way to go.
Makes sense. Yeah, I understand. So, Valeria, what I'll likely do is I'll link to your bio in the episode notes and when I share this on social media so people can reach out because I would be surprised if there wasn't at least one or two people here listening that would love to talk with you more about these things. So,
And I would love to talk about it.
it's important stuff. There's no question about it. That's the case for today. If you're listening and this one landed with you, post your thoughts on hashtag the case for and let Valeria and I know what's the thing you need to stop doing all at once. What season are you in right now? And what would it look like to actually honor it? Thanks for tuning in. And please remember, whatever your case is, don't be afraid to build it and carry it out into the real world.
Thank you so much, Matt.